Welcome to the third episode of Change That Matters. This is a story for kids for whom their dream to make it to prestigious educational institutions in the world looks far away. This is a story for kids who are growing up in the society inflicted by political instability and lack of educational opportunities. This is a story that shows that given hard work and commitment, everyone can fulfill their dreams to be educated. Our guest today was that kid someday and is now well on the path to fulfill her dream that seemed unreachable to her. Let us welcome our guest for today, Subha Baniya. Welcome to the show, Subha. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me here. I love your
Mhm.
initiative and I'm really glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, so for our viewers today, could you please start by introducing yourself, your background, your educational path, and your current career?
Sure. So to everyone who's watching, hi everyone. I'm Subah. I was
Mhm.
born and raised in Nepal. After my 10th grade, I came to the United World College here in the United States for my
Mhm.
high school education. So after doing my last 2 years of high school, I went to Wellesley College where I majored in biochemistry. And then after Wellesley, I've been working on different, research projects. I worked at MIT for a year and a half on a diabetes research project, and currently I'm working at Celsius Therapeutics in a cancer research project. And hopefully, I'm applying for a PhD program, so hopefully I'll be in graduate school soon.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get some time to talk more about your research. But for now, one interesting thing is that you came to the US for UWC program, and that's a basically equivalent to grade 11 and 12 in Nepal. So, the trend right now is that many people come to the US for undergrad. So how did you figure out about this opportunity to come to the US early and pursue high school here, and like how has that benefited you for your undergrad education and even now?
Yeah, so I guess I was very fortunate in that, I went to Grand Conto School from
Mhm.
starting from fourth grade. And so at least when I was there, the stats was that there's always one person getting into the CWC program almost every year. So in a way, I was very lucky to have seen, these um, seniors who I really admired and look up to sort of pursuing this opportunity every year. And I was kind of curious about it from very early on. And eventually, when I think started my 10th grade, that's when I started to seriously consider this program and look more into it. And I think the most attractive part of this program is that there will be students coming from literally all over the world, like more than 90 different countries. And I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to sort of be in that environment, learn different aspects of the world, and sort of really grow as a person. Um, so that's why went after this opportunity. And I think it's helped me a lot. It helped me when I was there. It's helped me after I graduated from the program too, um, because it is through that environment that I was able to become very independent. Because now, at a very young age, I was away from family in a very different culture, very different part of the world. And I think with that, there's a lot to learn about yourself and um, learn from each other, from your friends, from your teachers, and really pursue the opportunities you care about. And then that's where I learned about Wellesley College too, through my guidance counselor. She was amazing. And then it is through her guidance that I ended up going to Wellesley College too. So it's kind of like led from one opportunity to another, I would say.
So Wellesley College is a liberal arts college, all women college, right?
Yeah.
So how was your experience there?
it's very different, right? Exactly like you said. It's very nice in that it's like 2,000 students, maybe, or maybe a little more than 2,000 students. It's comparatively still a pretty small community, which was great for me because I think I like to be in a place where I have the freedom and independence, but people know me too, right? Versus there are some people who just absolutely love their independence. And then I think that's where like they love to go to a very large university. Up to you. But a unique part of Wellesley College is that it's an all women's college. And I think that was super important to me to have experienced. Because when I was in Nepal, right, and even in Grand Kunda school, there's this perception of like there's certain fields only like boys pursue or men pursue. For instance, like I remember, physics, chemistry, further math, this PCF combination in A level being so daunting to pursue
Mhm.
as a girl in Grand School, right? I think there was like one person, one female student who pursued that,
Mhm.
and the entire class was just boys. So when you're in an environment like that, whether it's subconscious or conscious, you sort of start imagining that, oh, okay, maybe this is just not for me, or maybe I should pursue that's sort of more women like to pursue. But when I went to Wellesley College, right, there are these women in all sorts of leadership positions. They're pursuing astrophysics, they're
Mhm.
pursuing all kinds of math you can
Mhm.
imagine
Yeah, yeah.
that there is to be. The dean is a woman, the president is the woman. And when you're in an environment like that, you start finally believing that no, it doesn't matter what kind of
But
field it is. It's absolutely possible for any woman to pursue any kinds of fields. So I think it's also after that exposure that I started like heavily pursuing more and more of scientific research as well. Because that element of, oh, maybe it's not for me kind of started going away or fading away. So it was very important in that aspect.
yeah, so let's go back to UWC a bit. I know there are a lot of students in Nepal and other developing countries who would love to be a part of this opportunity. And I know you said that you're fortunate enough to go to a good school, which kind of made you aware about this opportunity. But what is the application process like for someone trying to get into UWC?
Right. It might have changed a lot over the years. So take what I say with a grain of salt. But I remember sort of the application opening up maybe in the middle of 11th grade. So the timeline is a little different. For students in Nepal, you'd have to repeat your 11th grade because you're already in the middle of it when the application opens. So at first, it's just like a written application. They care a lot about students who are academically strong, but are also very involved in their community and however you define that community to be. So you could be volunteering in a lot of, um, you know, maybe at your home, like sort of community close to your home. For me, it was mostly Grand Contra School and
Mhm.
the extracurricular activities that I was involved in because it was a boarding school. I didn't have opportunity to be at home often. Um, so they care a lot about students who are very actively involved in community service, along with being academically strong. So the first phase of application is just sort of a screening tool um, to find applicants like that, and if they think you kind of fit to the culture and the value of UWC, then they invite you for interviews. Um, for me, it was 2 rounds of interviews. First round of interview was just a lot of team building activities to see how you work with the team. There's also the essay writing component of it. Um, Kind of there's like a debate. We had a debate with
Mhm.
our friends. I think it was just to like see how you really work as a team member because that's
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
important. And then once you go to the interview, then it's really about them testing sort of or like wanting to see how much of a good fit you are for the UWC overall core values. Then the second round of interviews also pretty similar. It's going sort of more into details of why you're interested in the program, why do you think you're a good fit. So all these are very vague memories. It's been a while, but that's sort of what I remember. And eventually, when you get through it all, they select you as a candidate. Then there's a portion of also trying to see what UWC, because there are different types of UWCs. There's one in India, one in Costa Rica. There's so many of these. So the final stage is just trying to figure out what students to place where. And there's like parents interviews involved too.
So, could you please talk a bit more about? I know you already said that you're studying biology, but more about what you chose to do after Wellesley in your field.
What I chose to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so after Wellesley, you know, I knew I was very interested in the intersection of biology and chemistry, and I loved doing research when I was, as an undergraduate, pursuing all these
Yeah.
opportunities. So that was clear to me. What still wasn't clear to me was whether I wanted to pursue medicine or if I wanted to just go into research. So that I was kind of still debating that, and so for the next 2 to 3 years, I just thought of taking the time to really figure out what I want to do next. So I think as I was doing research at MIT, I was also doing a lot of voluntary work in hospitals. I was doing a lot of shadowing work to really see where do I fit the most, because research and medicine are two different worlds, right? So it was just like me trying to really figure that out. I can go into the details of my research too, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think a brief description of a brief summary of your research would be great.
Sure. So at MIT, I was working in the labs of Dr. Robert Wenger and Dr. Daniel Anderson. There, I was working on this type 1 diabetes research project. So essentially, patients who are undergoing insulin therapy, they often go into stages of hypoglycemia, which just means that your body is because there's so much insulin, your body's does not have enough sugar in your body anymore. So you go into this stage of hypoglycemia where it can lead to sudden deaths, it can lead to fainting, like all these kinds of complications. This is especially difficult for young patients, like children, because I think adults are at least a little better about continuously monitoring their blood glucose levels. This isn't really possible for younger patients to do always and be very mindful of that. So in our lab, what I was working on was trying to develop this automatic system where you can just implant in your arm, and then as soon as it senses that your body is in has very low glucose levels, it automatically delivers this drug called glucagon so that your body starts producing sugar again, and so that your blood glucose level comes back to being normal. So that's what I was working on. But after working there, I realized I really loved working on cancer research project when I was an undergrad. So I kind of wanted to pursue more of that. And I also wanted to see what industry looked like, biotechnology companies looked like. So now I'm working at Celsius Therapeutics. It's a biotechnology company that's dedicated to finding a lot of drugs for autoimmune diseases, for different types of cancer. And so essentially, I'm working on a drug discovery project for cancer.
And is that what you want to do for your PhD?
Yeah, I think I've pretty much decided that I am very interested in cancer biology, particularly drug discovery work. So I have applied within the biomedical sciences PhD program in the cancer biology departments.
In
Yes.
the cancer biology. So, like just putting everything you said into a perspective. You grew up in Nepal, studied in Brian Country School, came for UWC, Wellesley, then diabetes research, then cancer research. Like, what were the times where you like felt like maybe I cannot reach here, or maybe I will not be able to pursue science, and like how do you motivate yourself in those times, maybe as a kid or maybe as an adult?
No, for sure. I think growing up in Nepal, especially, there are very limited career opportunities, right? That you're exposed to at least.
Hmm.
So if you're interested, remotely even interested in biology, medicine just seems like the natural next step. Um, and that's what I thought I wanted to do for most part of my life as well, until I was just exposed to this whole another world of scientific research and I got really, really into it. But obviously, there were times where I felt like I wasn't good enough, or my training sort of just, or my background just wasn't good enough, right? I think that sort of happened, especially when I pursued my first ever research opportunity at MIT,
Hmm.
um, because the cohort there I felt was just very strong, like starting from undergraduate. I think there might be their selection criteria could be like very different from other universities, just like looking for students who've had a lot of,
Research.
I might be generalizing, but that's how it felt like. The cohort was just very strong. So being in that environment and not having had much research background as a high school student, because people start pursuing research here like since ninth grade, like in labs, right? Because they have the opportunity
Yeah, yeah.
to do that. So obviously there were times where I felt like maybe my background isn't good enough, maybe I'm not competent enough, right? But I think in those, when I experienced that, the way I motivated myself was just to realize that, people's paths are different. Your backgrounds are different. So the most self-destructive thing you can do to yourself is just like comparing yourself to others who've had completely different upbringing than you have. So I think the most important thing to realize is, my path is different and I'm interested in this. And as long as I'm very curious and motivated to pursue this path, I'll make it work, right? Um, and the other part was also just like relying on your mentors a lot, or seeking the help from mentors that you need to, because if you don't speak up for yourself, there isn't going to be anyone to speak up for you. So I realized that like I had to just be very upfront about, these are the things I'm struggling with, and I need your help with this if we want to collaborate well in this project. And people were very receptive to that. I think I was lucky in that I had exceptionally great mentors. So I relied on their help and their guidance a lot. And eventually, I thought I got to a place where I felt very comfortable doing what I was doing. And so maybe that's how I motivated myself.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me that you brought this up, because even when I joined PhD, I had gone to PhD from a small liberal arts college, of 1,500 students, 1,600 students, and the research opportunities are there, but it's not as advanced as what, like I saw when I got into PhD at Washington University in St. Louis. So then you are, as you said, you are seeing students from, like top-notch universities who have done so much research already, Carnegie Mellon, UC Berkeley, and you are in the same cohort, and you're working on a project and you feel like I don't know anything. So I also felt that, and I think you're absolutely right that it's very crucial to understand that all of us had different stories to start with, and all of us have different life goals. So it's just like we are together in this journey, and we should focus more on ourselves and not compare ourselves with others. So that's a very nice
Exactly the
point.
journey I went through. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important point you went through. And you know you mentioned that you were kind of privileged or lucky. I wouldn't say lucky because you got there through your talent, skill set, but privileged to get into Brian Country School. And that's what kind of shaped your path moving forward. But like, we both of us come from a developing country where a lot of the children don't have financial backing to study in elite institutions, don't have the right awareness to know that there are opportunities available for their talent, for their skill set. And sometimes even there's a family pressure that, that doesn't allow them to pursue what they want. So what is your message for them? Like, what do you think, like, what they can do as a kid to kind of fight against these different problems they are going through to pursue their goals?
It's really difficult for me to answer this question, frankly, when I have perhaps not experienced the struggles that they have experienced, right? So it's very easy
Mm-hmm.
for me to say, you should do this, you should do that, or that. And it's just because I say that because I don't even understand what they're going through. So keeping that in mind,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it's not just on that individual to sort of now suddenly start having these opportunities, right? Because they already are in this underprivileged, they already have limited resources. So I think it's very harsh to say that, oh, you should do this. I think it's up to like individuals like us who have had gotten those opportunities and now to like share that with like what exactly like what you're doing, right? I think this is a great platform where you're, getting all these different people and having them share the experiences, how they got those opportunities. And if this can even reach like certain number of people who hadn't even heard of UWC and now they want to look into that, like that's success, right? So I think it's more like a collective effort in order to kind of move towards having balance in the availability of opportunities. But maybe as an individual, I would also say whatever opportunity comes your way, just like go for it. Don't question yourself, don't question your ability, just like go, like grab them when you can. And I say this because I think it is through these little opportunities that then you start networking with other people. You could have just gone there because you were excited about that opportunity, but what ends up happening is that you end up meeting more people who know more things, and from them you learn a lot, and then you start pursuing other opportunities that might just have come out of networking with people, right? And so then one thing leads to next. So I would say, I think my main advice would be to just start going after things that comes your way, and then just networking with people along the way so that it leads to more and more opportunities.
I think what you brought up is so true, that people who have got those opportunities and are privileged enough to understand and find solutions to the existing problem in the society should be active. And so there's an example right here. So after our last episode with Biswas Chepang, he talked about the lack of educational opportunities for kids in Chepang communities. And after viewing our episode, there were a few viewers who were interested to help, and we have already found out a solution to help two Chepang kids pursue their education for 3 years. So, we are able to sponsor two kids for 3 years of their education. So this is just an
That's
example.
that is
Yeah, this is just an example, but like um, more stories we bring out, I think we have more opportunities to help people in need of help. So I think you have some very good perspective on these things. Yeah. So you you also talked about medicine and research, and you said they have a distinct field. But as you said, in Nepal, if people are interested in biology, medicine is probably the only option for a lot of the people who are not aware about a research option. So for our viewers, could you please tell more about the distinction between these two fields, medicine and research?
absolutely. So medicine. If you are really, really interested in becoming a doctor, I think that really comes from an aspect of it's service, right? At the end of the day, you really want to help people by treating them. Um, you're interested in learning about human biology, like what goes wrong and what leads to diseases, coming up with diagnosis. It's like solving a puzzle, or at least that's
Mhm.
how it felt to me when I was shadowing physicians. And the main aspect really comes from like that part of empathy. You really want to help people, and it comes from wanting to treat them. And that's very different from wanting to do scientific research, because I think scientific research is about going after the unknowns, right? You are really curious about this topic, and even within that topic it's like really subtopic, and you want to delve really deeply into it, and you're just naturally curious about it. You want to solve things, you want to find like novel things. That's very different from studying medicine. And I think for me, I realized that I am interested in biology, I am interested in chemistry, but more towards like finding novel therapies, for instance. When I was shadowing physicians, I, instead of being like, wow, I really want to treat people, I also want to be there for patients. I think for me, it was like, I want to be there for patients, but I want to do that by discovering like new medical things, like by helping to sort of bridge that technology gap, like medicine gap, by through my curiosity towards science. I think that's sort of the distinction, and it really depends on what inspires you and motivates you at the end of the day.
So, to connect these two fields, so researchers come up with discoveries, and that goes through a lot of approval process, maybe new drug, maybe new finding, and then eventually physicians bring it to practice to help the patients based on those results, right?
Absolutely, yes.
You said you are interested in cancer research. Could you please talk more about the progress that we have made in the field of treating cancer, and what's your specific interest in?
Absolutely. I think if you think about it, we really come a long way, right? I think initially all you had available was doing chemotherapy, radiotherapy. That was pretty much it, just brutally killing all the cells. And the problem with that is, that is one of the methods, but the problem with that is now you're not just killing the cancer cells, but you're also killing the healthy cells. And not every patient kind of like responds to the therapy um, the same way as another patient does, because they're even within a particular type of cancer, their genetic profiles can be so different, their tumor profiles can be so different. So I think now, a lot of people are starting to talk about finding personalized therapy, which means, really based on the individual patient data set, trying to find drugs that specifically targets those patient profiles. So going from just like a generalized "let's kill all the cells," now we're or sorry, maybe that's a bad way to put it, but kind of like a non-specific approach to cancer. Now we've come really far in terms of finding, okay, what is really the target that's driving this cancer, and why don't we find drugs against a specific target that's responsible for driving cancer in this type of patient population. So I think in that, I would say we've come very far, but obviously there's a long way to go, because cancer cells are just very smart in finding out other ways to keep proliferating,
Mhm.
right? Keep progressing. So a lot of treatments, even if in the start it's great, um, ends up eventually failing because they find other strategies to mutate further, and just the treatment ends up not working anymore. So I think, yes, that is very challenging, but it also brings up a lot of other opportunities for, I think, researchers, right? For us to now understand, okay, so then what is even a better method to start like treating this disease? I think that's like what really drives my interest too, because there's just so much to figure out still. And as hopeless it might seem at times. um, I think the only way to keep going at this is to understand why it's failing and then go after what do we do next.
Yeah, so I'm also in kind of computational biology field, and one thing in my understanding is that once you come up with new discovery, then it's just a long process to bring it to practice. And I'm not talking about few months, it's like 10 years, 15 years, and sometimes it can go even longer. Uh, and right now, as we speak, chemotherapy is still widely in practice, right? That's still a way that people pursue to treat their cancer. So do you see this personalized therapy coming out in next 30, 40 years or earlier than that, or is that an unknown because
I
there's
think
no solution yet?
absolutely. I think it depends, right? For some types of cancer, personalized therapies has already worked super well, right?
Wow, wow.
So I know that there in this particular type of cancer, when you use targeted therapy, the cure rate was like above 95%. So that's a huge success story. But the problem is there are just so many types of cancers, and not every cancer kind of progresses because of one specific reason. I think that's why it's so difficult to treat it. Um, so it's difficult for me to say, when will we come up with a cure? But because I don't think there is anything like that. So, I mean, for the project that I am working on, we are kind of like thinking of like a decade range, right? Like, hopefully, if this drug that we're going after, hopefully, will be in the clinic in 10 years. But again, like, and that's also if we're lucky, like if
Yeah.
everything along in those 10 years actually
Hmm.
works. And now you start treating patients with that drug. um, do they keep responding the way we hoped that they would respond? We don't know. So
Hmm.
it's very hard to say that there's one cure because there's no such thing like that, but it's more hopeful than what we already have.
Yeah,
And it's like
so
demonstrated that it works super well with some cancers, for instance.
so every researchers focus on personalized therapy for a specific type of cancer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
it could even be like within the specific type of cancer, like within a specific subtype.
I see. So, one thing that you brought up, which is like in research, you're trying to find an unknown. And, a lot of the time it's a completely unknown zone you don't know anything about. And one problem I have faced, and other researchers I've talked with have faced, is you work on something for 6 months, you're trying something out, and it just turns out to be not of any use at all, and you just spend 6 months on this. Then you go and work on another thing for 2 months, it doesn't work out, so you're trying a lot of new things to see what you get. And that can easily be demotivating. And when I was applying for my PhD, my mentor who encouraged me to pursue PhD told me that it's all about knowing that there's some result at the end, even when that result seems very far away. So it's it comes down to how strong you are mentally in terms of taking failures. So for you, since you have been in research, have you faced those moments, and how does that affect you, or it doesn't affect you?
No. Obviously, when like you're working on a project, right? Like that sort of becomes your life in a way because you're spending more than 8 hours a day, 10, 12, like on this specific project that you really believe in will work, right?
Mhm,
And now again, I haven't even entered graduate school yet, right?
mhm,
So maybe I sound very hopeful at the moment, and then I go to graduate school, and then third
mhm.
year, I'm like completely scared, and
Uh,
why did I even choose this path? This is absolutely ridiculous. I could reach that point. I'm not saying that because like when you something you really believe in fails and it fails multiple times, then obviously you start questioning your judgments to begin with, right? Or
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
why did I even start? So there is that, but I think it's, or at least I've been told from my mentors, that's something that everybody goes through, and it's something that everybody has to go through, right? Um, and I think that's like how you really start building the stamina for things to go wrong, and you pick yourself up again, and then you test other ideas. So I think it's just like the base understanding of like, this is something I have to go through. Everybody goes through it. And this is really what it takes. This journey is what really takes for you to be this person really impacting, starting to impact your field one day. Um, so I think I would say it's not that it doesn't take me down. It's not something that it doesn't bother me. It obviously does. But if people didn't try at all, then we wouldn't even have come this far in terms of scientific advancements. Like, like we have, for example, take COVID for an example, right? Like it was such a hopeless thing. I mean, it still is it's still a pandemic. I'm not saying we resolved everything, but 2 years ago we didn't even have a vaccine, and now we do. So I think it's just a journey that everybody kind of has to go through. But I think maybe just reminding yourself why you decided to do science in the first place.
Yeah, and this applies to every field basically. When you face failures, you should remind yourself of the fundamental reasons you got into that field and believe in it. Yeah, right. So, this show is all about, we try to discuss small things we do as a person that ends up being big in our life, in other people's life, right? So growing up in Nepal, you probably didn't think I'm going to do research in MIT, not this specifically, at least. You wanted to do medicine. But now, when you look back into your journey, I would say you have been reasonably successful at what you wanted to do. So, what do you think are those small steps you took, maybe as a kid, maybe as an adult, that has brought you here in terms of your work ethics, discipline, or in terms of your attitude?
I think it's um, at the end of the day, I would say it's just like, for me personally, it's been two things. Like one, just hard work. Um,
Yeah.
I think I probably would say that even as a kid, I had this attitude of, if this is something I really wanted to do, I would just go after it. And regardless of how much work it took, I just like went for it, right? Like kind of like,
Mhm.
I think it's important to just have that like go getter attitude in life. And second, I would say huge mentorships, finding right people at the right time, having their mentorship was also huge. I will never disregard that. That wasn't
Mhm.
true for me to come to get to this point. So I would say like networking with people, finding all opportunities that comes your way, just going after it, and then you connect with more and more people, then that leads to other opportunities, and then you meet more people. So I think it's also that that the go getter attitude, and finding the right mentors, identifying them, and kind of like then holding on to them honestly.
Yeah, I have one probably incident or anecdote to mention on this. I have one thing that I want to talk about, which is relatable to what you just said, which is, I had a mentor and who once told me in the first year of my undergrad that, Sandeep, you should first take the job, then you should figure out how to do it. Not
Mhm.
like you look at the job and you say, probably I can't do this, so I will not even try this. So, and obviously it doesn't apply that you are a sportsman or you are a tennis player and then you want to do computer science job. In your field, he told me, you are pursuing computer science and math, and you should just take the job and figure out what to do. And I think
Mhm.
this has been the biggest advice I've got in recent years, because a lot of the times you get into things and you're completely lost, and I think that's actually a good experience. You end up learning a lot. So this go-getter attitude that you brought up, I think that has been helpful to me as well. So yeah, thank you, Shubha, for your time. It has been like I personally felt inspired by some of the stories you shared. So I really appreciate you coming here. I know you are busy with your PhD application, so thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really, really happy to be a part of it.